officially welcome to this is our 8th Off to College event of this series as part of the Diabetes Link. Welcome. Thank you for being a part of this tonight and joining us. We have a wonderful guest tonight. Dr. Julia Blanchette is here, who is our resident expert on all things insurance, financial literacy, how to navigate all of this difficult stuff. She is our go-to resource here at the Diabetes Link. So we're really, really lucky that she's made some time to join us. A couple of things that I just want to cover and get out, out of the base. Some of you may know us or may have known us as the College Diabetes Network. We're still here. We're still that organization. We're just called the Diabetes Link now. Still serving college students, still supporting families like yourselves and all young adults. So a lot of what you'll hear us talk about tonight may have to do with your student or your family member who's in college, and also will be really applicable after or in those years beyond as they're going to work or dealing with insurance there. Just really expanded our mission as the only national diabetes organization that supports young adults living with diabetes, full stop, everywhere. And this Off to College program that you're a part of, really this is designed to help your young adult and yourself, if you're a parent who's with us tonight, make the transition to college easier. We've had a lot of sessions this year on topics like, move into college, doing a college search, accommodations, and things that are adjacent to like this transitional life experience. And obviously we're closing out the year with insurance. For a number of people, it's open enrollment season on the marketplace. So it felt like when's a better time than any to talk about insurance and what that means. I think that's all the housekeeping. I'm going to let Julia introduce yourself, Dr. Blanchette. And my only other comment to our guests is if you've got questions, drop them in the chat as we go. Like if you think of something, don't think you have to hold it in your head, put it in the chat. We'll go back and try to get to all of those at the end. But thank you for being here. Julia, I'm going to give it to you for a minute.
Yay. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here tonight. My name is Julia Blanchette. I am a nurse scientist, which means I'm a registered nurse. And I also have a research doctorate or a PhD in nursing science. And my area of focus for my PhD is actually self-management and financial stress during the transition from pediatric to adult diabetes care or during emerging adulthood in that 18 to 30-year-old range of time. I'm also a certified diabetes care and education specialist, and I'm also a person living with T1D, and I was also a young adult. It's so weird. I guess I'm not technically a young adult anymore, so I guess I was a young adult living with T1D who transitioned to many of my own insurance plans. And the research that I do and the work that I do right now, I do some research and some clinical, but the research piece is really focused on helping young adults learn more about health insurance and empowering them to utilize health insurance and minimize the stressors that come with that to better improve diabetes outcomes. And I do that work with the Diabetes Link in a community engaged research project. So I'm very excited to be here tonight.
We're so lucky to have you here talking to this audience and to everyone who's watching it after the fact. So thank you. We're going to jump right in. We have some questions that we've collected, Julia, from parents, caregivers, things that we've just seen. One of my roles here as the director of programs at the Diabetes Link and a parent of a kid who has type 1 and with a college student is to keep an eye on our parent Facebook group. So probably a number of you are in there. A lot of these questions and conversations are things that come up that we hear from our audience, from caregivers or parents trying to support their kids and or from young adults that on our social media are asking questions about resources. So because we've got a number of parents, I think it would be great if we can, maybe our first topic of conversation is specifically geared towards the caregivers. And let's just call that supporting your young adult. How from your research, Julia, from your lived experience, how can a parent or a caregiver or a guardian support their young adult during the insurance transition? We all know that it's a lot. We know that it's a huge lift. What are some recommendations and things that you might have?
So the best thing you can do is if you're connected with your young adult living with T1D or diabetes and you're able to offer them any type of support, please offer them support. The worst thing that happens is when I have patients or friends where their parents really don't help them through that transition process because they may be going on to a very different type of insurance plan than they were on previously. But during my transition to different insurance plans, the most helpful thing for me was to be able to call my mom, not because she knew everything about my new insurance plan, but because if I needed a confidence boost or a pep talk to then go call my insurance company or call my durable medical supplier or call my pharmacy about a insurance related issue, my mom was the one that calmed me down to help me get through that. And we know from research and from my clinical experience that that young adults that have some parental support opposed to no parental support do better and are more successful, have less diabetes stress. So just being there as a resource, even if it's more of like an emotional support resource, like giving those pep talks is great, or even just sitting down with your young adult that you're supporting and walking them through kind of like problem solving is very helpful too, if you don't know the exact info about their plan.
That's a great tip. I mean, I think we hear that across the board and pretty much any area, insurance, diabetes management, talking to professors, accommodations. The number one thing we can continue to do, even as our, young adults and start to take over maybe some of the work or care that we've done, as the parent or, their guardian, is that emotional support, is to say, yeah, it's tough. Yes, this is a lot. Maybe not say, yeah, what do you think I've been doing all these years? That's not the lens.
Not helpful.
That's not helpful. No.
Yeah,
but to say like, yes, it's a lot and I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you figure this out. Nobody knows this. This is difficult for adults and people who either don't have, a chronic illness to manage and who've been doing this for a really long time. It's a complex system. So it's not you, and you've got this and I'm here to help. I think that emotional support, you highlighting that, is so key. So key. So I'm glad that you said that as like the first thing, as the number one thing. Talking about, I think it might be helpful to talk about some of those other practical steps. You mentioned modeling how to talk to insurance organizations. Thought about, what about having them, listen in or be a part of some of the phone calls if you have to like get on a call and appeal a claim, like just listen to the dialogue and the language and the verbiage that's used.
Yeah. And actually, so, looking back, one of the things that I did when I was on my first plan, was I would three-way call my mom into, the insurance company with me. And that was really helpful because even if we practiced, if I got nervous and I was having trouble communicating, like what we practiced, she was there, and not in like an overbearing way. She was there to kind of clarify what I was actually trying to ask. And I found that to be very helpful as well.
That is a great tip. So not just practicing, but maybe being a part of the call, and we can transition that from like having them be a part of us as the parent or the caregiver taking the lead to, okay, you do the call, you're setting it up, and I'll just be here listening on mute in the background. Yeah. And I'm here if you need me to like step up or help clarify something. I love that. Love that. I think I just mentioned a minute ago, like verbiage and language. I feel like another really helpful tip, and some of our recommendations, and I think this is in conjunction with you, Julia, is talk to them, define some of those terms, like have a conversation if it's over dinner one night or sitting in a car. That's at least where my teenagers and I have our best conversations. Talk about insurance terms. It's not fun. It's probably not what they want to talk about, but what is a premium? What is a deductible? What is, submitting a claim? What does it mean to have an out-of-pocket maximum? Like, I think any opportunity to talk about those things are probably helpful. Do you have other suggestions around that?
No, my only suggestion is just really echoing what you said. I learned what a deductible was because it was not a good situation and my parents were upset about something, and basically we had a very high deductible and we had to pay for insulin full cost. And I was a grad student at the time, and my dad was very annoyed that he was even supporting me and having to pay towards this deductible. And so that's why I learned how a deductible was, and that was not helpful, and that was really overwhelming. And so I think focusing on the terms before problems happen can help prepare your young adult to advocate for themselves through some of the more stressful situations.
Yep. It's like anything, like just knowing some of the terms, feeling like they have knowledge base. They're coming in informed and not like totally overwhelmed by the lingo, much less like trying to ask questions, or if you're, talking to an insurance agent, or honestly, even like a pharmacist or a pharmacy tech or someone at your endocrinology office about, points. So, or I'm sorry, really anywhere, just any of those conversations and communications. I'm looking at my notes of like other things and suggestions that we might have that just helps that we can do to kind of help our young adults prepare. Some other things that I think we have in our resources that we're working on, Julia, together, creating a list of questions to ask.
Yep.
Like, again, that role-playing modeling, what are things, that you want to talk about or that you routinely talk about, having like a little prep document, even if you drop it in the Google Drive, they can come back to.
Yeah, like a prep document, or even so you could have like questions listed out, but you could also make it more into a script if that's helpful for your young adults. Like if it's really somebody that gets nervous on the phone and they're scared that they're not going to be able to just like ask even the questions on the document, make a script out of it, or encourage them to make it into a script. So, hi, my name is blah, blah, blah. This is my insurance plan type, like just all the info that they need to know, and kind of some phrases they can use, I think could be really helpful too. I think, the generation that is in that young adult age group right now really doesn't like talking on the phone to people, and that's something that comes up a lot when you're dealing with insurance. So
that's such a great point. Like there are so many portals, there's so many ways to do things online until you potentially have a problem or need some assistance with the situation. Like, yes, you can renew things, you can submit claims, you can look at all of your insurance, explanation of benefits online. But generally, when you need to resolve something or you need to talk to, your insurance company or somebody else, you do need to get on the phone. And yeah, there's not a lot of opportunity to practice that up until then. That can be super overwhelming. So that's a really great, I love the script. Yeah, love that. One of the other ones I'm just going to mention that we have, listed here is creating like a checklist, or like, again, creating a document of what is the pharmacy phone number? What is your go-to pharmacy? What is that 1-800 number? Like putting it in a document. Yes, everyone should have their insurance card information, but who do you call? What's the pharmacy hotline? What's the, member services number? What's your group number? Kind of
and I've even
prescription
heard
details that right? What else?
I didn't mean to talk over you. I got excited.
No, sorry.
I've even heard of some parents will actually, like, if you have a really organized file with everything, or like a binder, I've heard of parents actually like giving that binder to their young adult to kind of like model after, to figure out how to organize themselves with all of that info. Because I don't know, it can be really overwhelming and you don't even know what info you're supposed to have. But if you can at least see look at the model, like a model to follow. Okay, I need my insurance card. I need my pharmacy benefits information. I need to know who my durable medical supplier is. Like if you can just like list it out for them and they can figure out how to organize. I think part of being really overwhelmed with something new like insurance is like the chaos, right? So helping them figure out how to organize it goes along with that. Sorry, Diane, I really didn't mean to interrupt. But
no, not at all. That's exactly what I wanted to hand off to you and say. What other things, what ideas, how to best help that. But I think that, a binder would have made my heart sing as a young adult for sure. So I identify with that for sure. But some kind of record keeping or notes, even, these are all the prescriptions. This is your prescription refill number. This is the pharmacy we do it through. If it's mail order or local over the counter, or if it's a DME or anything that you can kind of just start documenting and having those conversations casually before you hand off is great. Just information for sure. I think those are a lot of great tips. Peyton has dropped, for those that are kind of following along, Peyton has dropped a link in our chat about the Diabetes Link Resource Hub. We do have a section on insurance already. We have some PDF guides in there. We've even got some like videos that we made recently, a couple of years ago. We're going to talk about the next version of those in a little bit. But a great place. So copy that link and save that. There's some of this lingo and some of these things that we're talking about. If you want a link to share, you want something to work off of as you're kind of prepping your own diabetes binder or dealing with insurance, Cliff Notes for your young adult. Did they say Cliff Note? I don't think they use Cliff Notes anymore. I think I really just aged myself.
I know what you're talking about, so that's good.
Okay, great. Great.
Again, I'm not a young adult either anymore, so I don't know.
I'm gonna hear about that after, I'm sure. I think that these are all really helpful tips. Like, so from that parent perspective and how to support, how to get set up, how to like start cluing them into this behemoth. I would love to pivot a little bit and talk about just different types of plans. Because I think whether you're a young adult or maybe whether you're a caregiver or someone who has navigated your own insurance plan. Maybe you're fortunate enough for in your family to have always had an employer sponsored plan. And that very fortunate benefit. And your young adult is not working, or they're in school and they are eligible, or they need to find a plan on the, open marketplace exchange. I would love to just throw out a couple of like keywords and hot topics, Julia, and get like your quick take and summary on those. Just
sure. Yeah.
For our audience. How's that sound?
Let's go.
Great. Okay. Open enrollment. Let's start with that. Open enrollment, which is right now, and the marketplace. What does that mean to anyone who's looking for insurance, but in particular, a young adult who's maybe looking for their own insurance plan for the first time? What can they expect to find, and what should they look out for if they're looking for insurance on the marketplace?
Yeah. So if you're looking on the marketplace, I think there's a couple things to consider. So there's a lot of high deductible plans, which can be a little bit intimidating for young adults when they first see them. But it's important to know that depending on the state you're in, there may be some discounts for your income level. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize. And so that's really a thing to look into as well. I can't tell you what will apply for your state because it's different depending on the state. But the other thing too is to figure out when you're looking at those plans, you have to make sure you pick a plan that covers what you need. So there's, different types of plans. There's ones that make you stay within a certain network. There's ones that have a little more of an expanded network. So making sure that all of the providers, like all of the diabetes care that your young adult receives, is covered under that plan is really important. And then you also want another tip is to see if it does cover preventative care. That will not be fully out of pocket before you meet the deductible. So if there are only high deductible options, a plan that has preventative care will a lot of times cover insulin. And it also will cover some doctor's visits, like at least to primary care to get refills, if not endocrinology. So those are some tips. Some tips I have there. But what open enrollment means, I just started with that, is it's the period of time in which you can enroll in a plan, even if you don't have a qualifying life event. So otherwise you have to wait until you have a qualifying life event or until the next open enrollment period to sign up for a plan. And so the open enrollment period happens once a year, and it happens before the next calendar year. So, late in the year, and then you'll enroll in a plan that will start the next calendar year. So
perfectly said. That's fantastic. And I think the tip about preventative care and even insulin is really key. I know that one of the things in a lot of our existing resources right now, and that I have heard, when navigating insurance, just as a parent of my own daughter after she was diagnosed, is yes, try your best, to not end up with a high deductible plan because diabetes care can be very expensive. Sometimes that may be the option. That may be what fits in your budget. That may be what's available to you, either via your employer on the marketplace. That may be what you have. So I think that recommendation of yours to really focus on plan that covers preventative care in full, and to check that can include insulin, is huge, because that's a major cost, as we know, or have been historically. So that's a really great tip if that's the kind of insurance you're looking at. Continuing options for young adults. The marketplace is really, if you're off looking for your own plan on your own, you're not on your parents, your child can't continue on your plan. They've turned the magical age of 26 and have to figure it out themselves. Let's talk about COBRA, what that means, and the opportunity for a parent to have their young adult continue on their family plan that sometimes, especially if it's an employer-sponsored plan or a long-standing family plan, has maybe some better coverage. What is COBRA, and what does that mean, and how can that be beneficial or not?
Yeah, so COBRA is actually what we call like a gap insurance coverage. And so what it does is it allows you to stay insured with the same type of insurance plan that you were on previously, for up to a certain period of time. I want to say it's 12 months or 18 months. It's a shame I don't know that off the top of my head, but it's no longer than a year and a half in most cases. And you do have to pay for it, is the thing. So like usually your employer or, your dependent, what am I trying to say? You have a dependent who's on a parent's or guardian's employer sponsored plan. will contribute to the premium and to a lot of the costs associated with that health plan. And so that part's taken away though, once you're no longer eligible, either, you age off of your parents' private employer sponsored plan, you leave your job, whether you get fired or you're, or laid off. So those are kinds of situations in which COBRA, you can get COBRA. And I even was offered COBRA when I aged off. What am I saying? When I graduated off of my college plan, I actually was offered COBRA, which I was pretty shocked about. But again, it's very expensive because you don't have that group or that employer contributing into the premiums anymore. So it's like
you're paying the full, like
you're paying
the full cost. Yeah.
But that being said, it could still be less expensive per month with no deductible in some cases, right?
Right.
You could do that for like a year until somebody gets the plan that they need.
Right.
They have time to figure it out if you're able to afford it.
That definition of like gap insurance is a great way to frame it. Like think of it as something to fill a gap, especially if it is like a partial year. Maybe you're on that family plan. They have met the deductible. So yes, you have these high premiums that you would have to cover. But everything's covered.
Yeah. You can still keep going to the same pharmacy. You don't have to get new prescriptions. So it kind of like eliminates that part of the chaos, at least until you figure out a new plan that is good for you. So
I think that's great. It helps to fill the gaps. And yes, it can be expensive. Absolutely. And it's not for everyone. But if you're trying to maintain stability, which often is like a number one priority, and you're weighing costs, make sure that it is definitely a solid option to consider, especially if you consider being uninsured, paying, cash retail prices for insulin or your supplies at the pharmacy, or going without. Like at the end, it's definitely a worthwhile option for sure. One of the other things I just want to add to that we see sometimes in conversations, like in our parent group, is when we talk about how to support your young adult, if you're able to, as a family, and not everyone's financially able to, but if you've got the ability to do so, some parents split that COBRA cost and say, okay, we'll help cover that a little bit. You cover some of it as well. If you're able to extend that for your young adult before they go to an exchange plan, or maybe they're trying to get a job and it's hopefully just for a few months and they're, or they've started a new job and they've got a 90-day enrollment period. That's
the other thing.
To do that. Yeah, go ahead.
Those waiting period. I was gonna say another problem that young adults run into is when you get a new job, insurance doesn't kick in right away.
Yep.
And so, so for example, when I finished my postdoc training, my insurance ended like the end of November, and the job that I have now, insurance doesn't start until the next month after you're hired. And so while that doesn't sound that bad, it meant that I had to try to make sure I started my job like the last week of November so that it would kick in immediately in December after my my postdoc insurance ended. So I was working 2 jobs for 1 week to make sure I didn't have that gap in coverage. And they did tell me, well, you can, if you pay for anything out of pocket, you can, retroactively submit the claims and we'll reimburse you. But like that can end up being so much money when you have diabetes. And I just didn't feel comfortable not having insurance. It was also during COVID when before people were really vaccinated. So it scared me so much to think about maybe like getting COVID and then going into DKA or something and having a hospitalization. Like it just completely freaked me out. So I was really grateful that I had my postdoc training mentors and that my new employer were willing to work that out. But like that was a crazy thing I did. And sometimes it's a 90-day period. Like the next month, like to me, it only ended up being a few days. But like it can end up being 90 days until you actually get your insurance to kick in. And so like what do you do until then? And it can be really challenging.
And I feel like that's a scenario that a lot of people face with insurance in general, just general population and trying to navigate coverage, but it is extra critical, especially when you have, regular supplies, insulin, some of the other things you can do, which, you know, with any change, either at year end as you're trying to max out your deductibles, or if like you've got an insurance plan that's ending and you're switching to something, you've got a waiting period, is get all those refills in, like max out on everything that you can on the plan that you're on, before it runs out, you know, so that you
Oh
kind
yeah.
of pile and have like a good backup for sure whenever that's possible. Lots of tips and tricks. And again, some of this is like very like general population, everyone, you know,
Yeah.
best practices, but really critical to think about, you know, okay, when will my new insurance kick in? What do I do? You know, consider what would emergency planning be in the meantime if I don't have insurance? What might that cost me? And that's where that COBRA, you know, or gap insurance might be an option. And what can I do to help mitigate my, you know, that for myself in the meantime? What can I refill? What can I like be really meticulous about timing? Can you get a refill and ask your provider sometimes, for, you know, a little more insulin on their prescription, you know, your refill prescription or something. Not always, you know, but what can you do to kind of maximize the stockpile so that you're covered just in case on base level that doesn't take care of emergencies, but it covers like the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah. No, what I do is, so every like probably in 2 weeks, so like mid-December, I just go through and try to refill everything.
Yep.
Because I get so freaked out, even though I know my insurance is going to be fine. There's just something about the new year that just
I
freaks
do
me
the same
out.
too for my, yeah.
Yeah. And so, you know, if I can't get a refill, it's fine. But I just go through and try to get everything refilled. So
I just pushed through the 90-day refill for through DME with Byram today, and the box showed up today, and it's literally everything at once because just needed to get it, wanted to get it all on this calendar year just in case anything changed. 100%. Yep. Great tips. Let's see. Let's talk about Medicaid. It's not as talked about, you know, in a lot of conversations, but it's actually could be a really, really great option for college students or young adults not making income, college in particular, if you're not working. If you're in the workplace, hopefully you have access to an employer-sponsored plan. If you're not in the workplace, if you're in college, you've aged off of your parents' plan, or, you know, that's not an option, when and where can Medicaid be an option and something that a college student or young adult should consider?
Yeah, so I think one thing that I did not realize until I was a healthcare, you know, until I'm a diabetes care and education specialist and doing this type of research is I qualified for Medicaid during my PhD and didn't realize it. So instead, my parents, if you think about this, I was still on my parents' high deductible plan when I could have
been
said,
on.
you know, so like that would have saved my parents money if anything, right? But the other thing too is I think Medicaid is so stigmatized. Maybe I'm being more positive about it because I live in Ohio, and one of the good things about Ohio's legislation is that we actually are really great. If you have diabetes and you live in the state of Ohio and you're on Medicaid, you get everything you need. So we have a great CGM. We have great CGM coverage, great insulin pump coverage, you know, great insulin coverage, easy to get things through pharmacy. I know not every state is like that for people with diabetes, but you might be surprised. Your state might have better coverage for people with diabetes, or the state that your young adult is living in, than you thought. And one thing that I do really want to point out here is, I mean, I've had friends with diabetes that couldn't start the grad programs or the undergrad programs that they wanted to. I have one friend that couldn't start her doctorate at the program she wanted to because they literally didn't offer insurance, and so it was one of these situations where, and now looking back at it, I'm like, wait, she would have qualified for Medicaid because she could have stopped working her part-time job, right? So if you stop working and you don't have any income, you can enroll in Medicaid, right? And especially if you're going into a program, a school program or a training program. And so I think a lot of people don't realize that. So you can go on Medicaid if you're not, you know, if you're under that income threshold for the state that you're in. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of PhD students meet that income threshold. I now know that.
And just full-time students in general that are on their own.
Yeah.
You know, like schooling is expensive and takes a lot of focus and as a, you know, priority. And yes, there's a lot of young adults and students that work, you know, jobs to make ends meet or do a little bit of both, but it's a real consideration, especially as it affects your eligibility for healthcare. And in particular, you said a minute ago, if you're a young adult or if you're going out of state, if you're going to a different state for school, or for a PhD program or for, you know, grad school or undergrad, absolutely just just do the research and check out what the guidelines are in that state.
Yeah.
Just so you know, because
Yeah.
information, knowledge is always helpful, just so you know, even if you're still covered on your parents' plan for a little bit,
Yeah.
it's great to know what your options are in the state where you're going, because it does very much vary from state to state, as you said.
It so varies. Yeah, definitely.
One of the challenges and joys and frustrations of navigating insurance is that you can have it all figured out for scenario A, but scenario B right over here is totally different. And it's frustrating, and collecting information whenever you can, when it's not a crisis, when it's not a situation, just doing a little bit of advanced planning and research is one of your best tools for success, for sure.
Definitely. And then the other thing on that note, I don't know if it's on this list or not, but a lot of schools will offer insurance plans. And like the insurance plan I had during my PhD, that I ended up on during my PhD, was like the best insurance plan that I was on. Well, now the one I'm on is pretty great, but it just surprised me with how much it covered. It had, the copays were so minimal, and it did cost like $1,000 a year. But what I was able to do is I had financial aid, and I was actually able to apply some of it towards that. So that's something just to keep in mind. Grad school, I wasn't able to apply financial aid to it so much, but I know they let the undergrads do that at Case Western. So
that's a great tip. Honestly, that's not even one that I knew. So filing that in my head as well, and to share with some of our parents. But yeah, if you've got financial aid as an undergrad, check into that. See if that's an option, because that may make the school plan more affordable. Overall.
It's billed as tuition, like it comes through in the tuition bill. So you can apply any of that.
That's a really great tip for part of why we're talking about this is off to college, because there's so many scenarios that apply to that specifically.
Sometimes.
Great. I'm trying to think. I think the other biggie, just in terms of like types of plans and criteria, because I'm keeping an eye on the time, and I do want to talk about like diabetes tech and insurance a little bit. FSA and HSAs. I stumbled over this.
This is my favorite topic.
Okay, great. Because this I think can be super complicated. I'll acknowledge here at the Diabetes Link, we have a lot of young adults working here, and parents and families of all ages. This is hard for us, and we work in this. And what's the right choice for everyone in terms of FSA, HSA, and open enrollment in terms of supplementing your insurance plan? So
so it depends on the type of insurance plan you have. So if you have to have a high deductible plan in order to qualify for an HSA. So if you don't have a high deductible plan, you're not going to qualify to open up an HSA. And an HSA, think of it as like a health savings account. I mean, that's what it is, a health savings account. So you contribute money in there, it stays in there, it doesn't leave there. You don't have to use it by a certain time, but it does have to be used towards healthcare expenses. And what's really nice is a lot of employers will put some money in there or do some type of match to help you during your deductible period, because it accumulates over time. You don't have everything in there up front. So that's the one thing to keep in mind is if a young adult's like, I'm going to go for a high deductible plan, I'm going to put all this money in my HSA. Well, you have to be careful, because you can't necessarily use all the HSA money towards your deductible. It takes a while to come out of each paycheck and go in there. And then sometimes the match doesn't come in until a certain period of time or a certain time in the year. I love FSAs though. Of course, I love FSAs because I have an FSA, and I talk to all of the younger adults that work with me about how to best utilize their FSA. So what I do is I figure out what my deductible is. It's not very high. I figure out what my out-of-pocket max is, and then I figure out what are going to be my healthcare costs for the year. And so last year, I figured all of that out. I actually ended up maxing out my FSA, but then I was able to get an insulin pump like January 3rd, like with my FSA money, and nothing came out of my pocket then, right? The FSA was refilled with the money for that year. And so they put it in up front, although they do continue deducting it from your paycheck for the rest of the year, right? And then I was able to get my pump up front without having to worry about putting down a big cost on it. And that was like an amazing thing that I did. And I did that 4 years before on my FSA too. And I was, So it's great. The other thing about FSAs that I love telling people, so even if you're on a school plan or your parents' plan and you work somewhere that offers benefits, you can still get an FSA and use it towards your healthcare costs, even if you're not enrolled into the insurance plan. And so that's what I've done in the past, and that's really nice, because instead of I was in a situation where my parents tried to help me as much as they could with health health costs and health insurance costs when I was in grad school, but they couldn't always. And so there were certain things that I paid for. Like I'd go to the pharmacy and use my own money, right? I could use my FSA card for that from my part-time job, and that was very nice. So that's
such a
tip.
great tip. I'm going to restate it just for the good of all of us in the audience, that
Yeah.
even if your health insurance plan maybe comes from somewhere else, from, you know, a parent's plan or, you know, marketplace or school plan, something that if you are working somewhere where you are eligible for benefits, take a look and see if where you're working offers an FSA, because you can put money away towards that for healthcare spending, you know, healthcare costs, and combine those together. That's a great way to maximize options for sure.
But the one thing about the FSA that I didn't say is that you have to use all the money. Like it doesn't it doesn't stay there like it does with the HSA. So you have to use it. You use it or lose it. There is usually kind of a grace period. So, you know, each employer has a different grace period. It could be 1 month, 3 months. You have to use all of the money from the previous year within that time, or else it goes bye-bye. So you know, some people will find themselves in a pickle to figure out how to spend that money that was already taken out of their paychecks. You can just do like a big purchase of like skin tack, glucose tabs, like any type of like diabetes related supply that you can find on somewhere like Amazon or the FSA store that is eligible for HSA or FSA. You can just kind of dump on whatever is remaining. So.
That's a great tip. That was the other thing I was going to bring up, and you covered it, that it doesn't, you know, FSA money doesn't have to be prescriptions or premiums or deductibles. Like anything, when you check out at a pharmacy, and a lot of times you'll see in the receipt where it'll say FSA eligible, or in Amazon if you're checking out, because absolutely, we definitely buy stuff on Amazon, you know, skin tack for sure. We buy in bulk on Amazon. 100%.
Yeah, that's like the one thing. That's a nice luxury thing, that if you can use your FSA towards it, it's nice.
Yeah, you can use it towards some of those, like, you know, kind of smaller, you know, or like not the expenses that you would think of, not the doctor's bills, not the prescriptions, but all those things that like really make your management easier and that are necessary, and you know, in your day-to-day management to offset that cost. So it's not like, oh, well, while I'm at the store picking up, you know, all of this stuff at the pharmacy, I also have to spend all of this money on all of this, you know, that it's all part of your, you know, healthcare. Anything else you feel like, Julia, that we're missing just in this area of like options, plans?
I think the only other thing is, you know, if your young adult is trying to pick an insurance plan like from their employer, a lot of times there's multiple options to pick, and that can be really overwhelming. And so I think making sure that they just don't click on something because they're overwhelmed. And I know that can sound kind of like you don't want to be overbearing, but I know I have so many friends with diabetes that have just like picked whatever plan because they were so overwhelmed about like really trying to read into what it was, because they didn't understand it, right? Like they thought, even if I try to read all this information, I'm not going to get it. So I think even like offering to sit down with them and go through the different plan options would be great, because they don't have that support from their coworkers or like even HR, because they'll explain the different plans, but I think sometimes when you're asking your coworkers like what plan they have, they'll tell you what plan they have, but it doesn't mean it's best for someone with a chronic condition like diabetes. So I think offering them that support to like really look through each plan and understand the different, like, you know, what each one means is a really nice thing that you could offer.
100%. I think that's such a great tip. I know I've done that over the years at like different jobs, is, you know, talked with like, you know, early career, like new people in our organization about, you know, plan choices. But you're right, it's very personal, and that's a very different thing. What someone, you know, may need out of their insurance plan who goes a couple of times a year, doesn't, you know, isn't managing, you know, an expensive, you know, chronic condition management, is a very, very different thing. I would also say, when possible, feel free to ask your HR or your, you know, benefits company to dig into things for you. Feel free. You are also allowed and highly encouraged to call your insurance companies, call those providers. And again, it goes back to like, not all young adults want to talk to people, and none of us do either, but it's helpful, it's beneficial, and they're there for a reason. That's someone's job. Like when we think about like pharmacy, you know, benefits managers, those are people's jobs. They're there for a reason, to help us, to help you figure out. Don't hesitate to pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm trying to consider these two plans. I use this kind of insulin. Is this covered? Yes or no? You may not always get the direct answer that you need, but
this is true.
you may not. but you also may, and it's very worth your time. And that is, there are people that are there to do that, just to help you kind of walk through and try to understand what your options are, what's covered and what's not covered. And yes, to that point that that you may not always get what you need. It's confusing to people who work in it. So if it's confusing to people who work in this field, in this industry, but what's covered and whether something's durable medical equipment, if it's covered at pharmacy. I remember my own insurance company was confused when we were trying to order Dexcom for the first time. Like our own insurance company was confused about where to send it and if it was covered at the pharmacy or DME. If it's confusing to them, of course it's confusing to or someone navigating it. And that's why all these resources and why we're having this conversation. So anything that we can do to help, for sure. Okay, I'm keeping an eye on time. We don't have any questions in the chat yet, but I predict that they're going to come. I do want to talk about one other thing, and then we can give them a little bit of a sneak peek and talk about what we're developing, what you're developing, your research that's coming down the pipe. But diabetes technology and insurance in particular, because there's the cost of doctor's appointments, premiums, insulin, prescriptions, and then there's all the tech. And we certainly recognize that access to technology, CGMs, pumps, an in-pin versus, pens versus vials, there is both a personal choice and preference and what you want to use, and there's no wrong choice there, but also a lot of those choices are made by people based on what your insurance covers, which pump, they cover, or which kind of insulin they cover. And a lot of times that, that's choice number one. We actually have a quote, because we just launched our technology topic. Julie, you probably saw it. Or, for those of you that are watching, we just launched a topic in our resource hub on diabetes technology. And one of the quotes from the students that's in one of those written words, in the blog there. The student said they just turned 26 and that they feel like the most challenging thing is getting access to affordable medical equipment in addition to their medications, because there's so many things to get. There's pods, the PDM, the sensors, the transmitters, along the meters, like all of the tech that goes along with it, and that there's not an affordable one-stop shop and not an easy flowing process. So what's your best advice, Julia, or in particular with diabetes technology, maybe identifying DME versus pharmacy, and any recommendations or things your research has learned or your personal experience for people to look out for?
So DME versus pharmacy is so annoying because even as a provider, it's like, unless you really know that person's insurance really well, like for example, and I'm in Cleveland, and we have a lot of people that are on these like employer sponsored Med Mutual plans, because Med Mutual is based like in Cleveland. So we have a lot of, we're really familiar with that plan, for example. So we'll know exactly where to send Omnipod 5s for people on that plan. But otherwise it's really tricky. And I think I've seen providers' offices mess up where they're sending prescriptions too, because sometimes if you don't know, they don't know either. And so I think it's nice to come in understanding where things should go. Like that helps facilitate the process. And I think to do that, honestly, ask your pump reps. Your pump rep a lot of times can do a benefits check, or at least tell you based on your insurance if they know a DME supplier that'll work with your insurance, or if they know you can go through pharmacy. That's what I did all of grad school. I just asked my pump reps. Given I have a relationship with my local pump and CGM reps, because I was also working part-time as a diabetes educator. But if you have their contact info, I would ask them to help. The other thing is, like, if you want Omnipod 5, for example, and you don't know which pharmacy to get it from, you can go on to a lot of the websites, especially for things that you can go through pharmacy now, and they use these this way to help them kind of figure out what pharmacy will be best for you. It's called Aspen. So you can like fill out your information for Aspen, and then Aspen will kind of do the background work and then tell your healthcare provider's office where to send it. And it's like there's programs like that you can find on the on some of the websites for pharmacy, that pharmacy supplies that are great. But the other thing too is, like, don't assume that just because you can get your CGM, for example, through a DME supplier, that's where you have to get it. I have countless friends and patients who keep ordering their Dexcom through a DME supplier for, whatever, I don't know, whatever, $100 or whatever a month. And then I'm like, have you tried to see if you can get it through pharmacy? And they're like, what? And so, these DME suppliers, they'll keep sending it. They're not going to tell you can get it through pharmacy for cheaper potentially. So I think, if you have pharmacy insurance, if you have a pharmacy and, benefits, check if you can, with your pharmacy plan, if you can get certain pump and CGM supplies. So right now for pumps, it would be Omnipod pods, Omnipod 5 controller, the Dash, I think you still have to get through Insulet, but don't quote me on that. I know this is recorded, so don't quote me on that. And then you can get the iLet, Beta Bionics iLet pump supplies through pharmacy, and then you can get CGMs through pharmacy as well. So those are the things you get through
pumps
pharmacy.
Are through DME, right?
Yep, Tandem, right? Yes, basically Tandem pumps. Tandem and Medtronic tube pumps and supplies for those two pumps right now are still through DME, but you can still get the other things we just mentioned through DME too. So if I do have the patient here and there though, that it is cheaper to go through DME once in a while, like especially if they have two different deductibles, for example, and they've met their like medical out-of-pocket max, it may be cheap. Like that's a situation when it may be cheaper to keep going through DME. But I think it is, you kind of have to make a lot of phone calls and check with both pharmacy and I wouldn't ask DME what the cheapest option is, because they're just going to tell you how much it costs to go through them. But definitely connect with some of the people at the technology companies that you've gotten your supplies gotten your systems through. And the other thing is, if you are ever in a situation, or your young adults ever in a situation where they suddenly lost their job, or they have a lot of financial stress, all of the pump companies, I believe right now, or most of them, on their websites have financial assistance programs, same with CGM. And like, these are newer, these all came out during COVID. So, if they're having a lot of trouble affording or getting what they need, apply to these programs too. I do think there is probably like an income threshold from my understanding, but I know that if you are like not making any money, I've seen patients get assistance.
Such a great tip.
Yeah.
That's so important, especially as it applies to the tech, and pumps and CGMs. Of course, adding that is also an option for insulin. A lot of like, that's also an option. Go to those websites. A lot of people know about GoodRx, and obviously there's been a lot of changes this year, like, thanks to legislation or, different, oh my gosh, pharmaceutical corporations setting, some price caps on some things, but also check. I'm not saying the right words. But that there's, but definitely go to their websites, check for assistance there, but in particular on the technology. That's a great recommendation as well. That's really
and the other thing too is just like, tell your young adults to talk to their diabetes care teams, because right now, like the Libre is like, 70-ish depending dollars a month if you're paying completely out of pocket for it. And that actually may be less expensive than paying for a Dexcom with insurance for some people. And so like, if your young adult's not using an integrated or an automated insulin delivery system, and they really just need access to CGM, but it's too expensive for them, like tell them to talk to their diabetes care team about all the options they have, because there may be some more affordable options out of pocket even that they're not aware of. So
that's a great tip.
Yeah.
Great tip. Great. We're getting near the end of our time. I want to have a minute. So if you do have questions and you're on with us live and not watching the recording, feel free to drop those in the chat now. We'll take a look at those and try to answer those here in these last 5 minutes we have left. But while we're waiting to see if any questions come in, Julia, can we talk about the sneak peek that we want to share with our parents here and what's coming? So
yes.
In short, the Diabetes Link we've dropped in the chat, we have some existing resources on health insurance that you can check out. But this is just the tip of the iceberg, because there's a whole new T1D financial toolkit that we will be sharing going live with you. I'm going to let Julia take it away, because she is leading this research and these resources that are being developed. So go, Julia, talk about what we'll have to help support people very soon.
Yep. So we are going to have awesome resources on this resource hub. We are going to have a 13-part video series.
Yep.
Wait, 5? Wait, why are you saying 5?
No, sorry. That was Excited Jazz Hams.
Oh, sorry. I was like, is there 5? Are there 5 something I don't know about? Sorry,
no. You're right.
There's
13 videos, yes.
13-part video series. They're going to be short videos, only a few minutes in length. And it's going to be young adults and experts sharing their stories and their tips about all of these different areas that we identified with a community advisory board. So a group of young adults themselves, with what content they really need to better understand health insurance, to better advocate for themselves, to better navigate the healthcare system and diabetes, with like what knowledge do they need about insurance and about finances to really do this and do this well and feel empowered. So yeah, it's going to be 13 videos. And then we also have a bunch of other content that we're developing. So, there's going to be scripts to talk, how do I talk to my insurance? Like, what do I do when I call them about an issue with coverage? We're going to have that's not the exact thing we're doing, but I'm just giving some examples. Like we have some scripts that we're developing just based on what the community advisory board said. We also have a dictionary with all the key terms about insurance. We'll also have flowcharts with pharmacy versus DME, and those are just a few things that we're working on potentially there with that. So we're very excited
for this. So excited for this. There's been huge demand and request for. I mean, we all need help with insurance, as we kind of started the beginning of this conversation. It's complicated for so many people, but in particular, insurance resources focused on young adult experience specifically, and just supporting navigating, insurance when you have type 1 and then insurance when you have type 1 and you're in a young adult in this transitional phase, because it's so overwhelming, as we've talked about for an hour tonight. Very, very helpful. We're very excited about it. Nancy, I see your comment in the chat that very often the insurance people and don't have any clue about some specifics of coverage. One, that can very much be the case. Keep asking. Don't hesitate to ask, to talk to a manager or a supervisor. 2, that's part of why we're producing these resources and we're so excited to partner with Julia, because we know the need is out there. And so if we can help you advocate for yourself and be informed, and you or your young adult go into that conversation and say, I know this, to ask about that to help guide the conversation and get the answers you need, rather than relying on, some of the insurance people to be able to figure out what you need. The better that we can, help you with your management and your outcome and quality of life. So I hear you. I wish that wasn't the case. And you're right. It is often. Anything else specific, Julia, on your end about the toolkit or about any conversations?
Yes, I have an update on my end about Omnipod. I don't know why I said Dash wasn't available through pharmacy. I was thinking that the old one. Yes. I'm like, it's the end of a work day. I'm like, I don't want one of my friends from Insulet to see this and be like, Julia, what are you telling people? I'm sorry. I had a little brain fart there. So Omnipod through pharmacy, guys.
Omnipod through pharmacy, Tandem through DME. Yep.
Yeah, just wanted to add that clarification there. Are you going to show them a sneak peek of the toolkit?
I am going to show that as we close this out.
Amazing.
I want to, while I'm pulling this up, I want to just remind everybody, follow us. So when this toolkit launches, we are going to blast it everywhere. If you are on our email list, you'll get a heads up on it. If you follow us on social media, you'll get some sneak peeks as some of this comes out. And obviously, if you've got questions in the meantime, let us know. You are welcome to email us to my email address here. We're happy to connect. If it's a question that we at the Diabetes Link don't know about, we'll chat with Julia. We'll get you the resources. We are here to help and support. So, keep an eye out for those to come, but also don't hesitate to reach out to us in the meantime. Let me pull.
And the other thing, while Diane's pulling that up, so we developed this with a community advisory board, and then the link and our video production friends are putting together the whole, what everything is. So they're putting together the videos, these resources, they're going to make them look pretty. And then we're actually making sure they're clinically validated. We're going to make sure that they actually improve health insurance literacy and decrease financial stress and improve diabetes outcomes, like diabetes distress, diabetes related quality of life, and an A1C in young adults. So we're hoping that by the time that fully shared with you, that that we'll also be able to say, look, it will help your young adult with all of these other pieces of their diabetes management.
Yep.
If they go through the whole toolkit. So
super excited about that part of it. And you know, what a step forward in being able to say, this is information that we know that people need, and we've been able to, we know it's going to be helpful to you, because it's been, you know, it's been helpful. We've already measured it and checked it out, and tested it with others. Without further ado, let me present
yay.
this. I'll hop over to a screen share, everybody. On.
It was echoing a little. Can you guys hear it? I can't hear it. Yeah, I can't hear it.
Boo. Okay.
Well, as you can see,
yes,
there is an awesome young adult who lives with T1D speaking about her experiences, and that was also, we also have these experts. So that happens to be a healthcare advocacy expert who also lives with T1D, who's kind of sharing about how to, you know, the process, how it is a really difficult, stressful time, and that, you know, just kind of defining some of the key terms to
yep.
know.
And I think, as the caption says, and maybe we'll share a little bit of the snippet with some of the follow-up for those that want it.
Yeah.
As you know, we deserve access to medications and treatment. And that is what we're here to do with the Diabetes Link, you know, advocate and support young adults to thrive. The work that you're doing, particularly in the lens of, you know, health insurance, you know, financial literacy, we're here to do that, to help, you know, figure out how to navigate all of the barriers and celebrate all the wins as well. I'm not going to try to replay it again because we're at time and we're starting to lose some people. So I'm going to say thank you, and we're going to, you know, end up tonight. If you do have any last questions for us or for Julia, we added in my personal email. I'm happy to connect you. Follow us on social media. The only other thing that I need to say before, Julia, I give it to you for any last words, is to thank the sponsors that we do have. All of our resources that we share at the Diabetes Link are free. To young adults, to parents, to families, to clinicians. That's really important to us, access, accessibility for everybody. But in order to do that, we do have some support from our Off to College sponsors, so Dexcom and Vertex, who've heard us talk a little bit about Dexcom tonight, Lilly, Novo, Sanofi. You know, thank you to all of our sponsors for helping to, you know, make our work possible, and to share resources to our community. Any last words from you, Julia?
No, thank you so much for having me tonight.
Thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you all for attending, spending an hour with us tonight. And if you're catching the recording, enjoy, and we hope to be in touch with you soon. Keep an eye out for the new resources coming.